This is FrontPage with Njideka Maduka, bringing clarity to the headlines, one page at a time.
A fantastic day to you. It's Wednesday, July 9, 2025. It's been a bright and sunshiny day. We woke up with a friendly weather compared to the other days. So today is really looking good, I hope. But of course, you know what they say about the weather is unpredictable, so you may want to go out without umbrella. It's the front page. Welcome. The name is Njideka Maduka. So what do we have before us today? We have this day, we have leadership, we have guardian, and of course, the Vanguard. Let's get started, shall we? This day, big bird on the front page is this economic-related news. ADC, or should I say politically laced economic news. ADC, Tinubu's failure behind US Snub. ADC, Tinubu's failure behind US Snub. The African Democratic Congress, ADC, has said Nigeria was not invited to the White House trade talks because of President Bola Tinubu's economic failure, stressing that under the All Progressives Congress, APC leadership, the country has gone from leading the continent to being left out entirely. And of course, ADC made the assertion in a statement by its interim National Publicity Secretary, Bolaji Abdullahi. Well, we're learning that the US president, talking about Donald Trump, has invited 5 African leaders to the White House for some sort of commercial talks, right? Countries like Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, and of course Senegal. Apart from commercial talks, Bolaji Abdullahi is saying they were invited because they have shown capacity for self-help. And it goes to show that since Nigeria was not invited, it means that the country is not serious. Well, for a start, I think there is this penchant for us to associate ourselves with the powerful countries of the world. And sometimes we like to measure our self-worth by that association. But of course, we know that serious countries do not wait to identify themselves with supposedly powerful countries. They try to make their economy work. They try to take themselves seriously, similar to that countries of the world we want to associate with them. And so it's unfortunate that sometimes when we want to measure our worth, we measure it by how much we try to associate with other countries. But then again, if this is based on the supposed seriousness of other African countries that were invited, countries that are also doing well on the continent, like South Africa, were not listed. And so we need to ask critically whether this is actually for commercial purpose. Even though some people would say there is that move by the US to get more friendly with African countries because you have other countries that are trying to gain the friendship of Africa. You talk about China, you talk about Russia. But we need to ask, what is the purpose of the meeting, right? Does it show that some of these African countries are really doing well? The fact that they have rich minerals, which maybe the US wants to tap into, because there are other insinuations that this may be beyond the so-called commercial interests. You know, how much of it is about enhancing the security of the US? Because other reports suggest that these 5 countries harbor routes for illegal migration to the US. So are we going to see a situation where the talks might be more of security than about commercial interest? We have seen Donald Trump invite heads of countries, and everything in the White House actually ends up like a drama. You invite leaders of the world and you begin to point accusing fingers at them at what they are doing wrong. So the countries that are going for this meeting Do they need to be prepared for a possible showdown with the US government, regardless of how they want to paint this visit as something that should be mutually beneficial? But beyond that, I think Nigeria should also look inward, because it's really sad. When you look at the economy, you look at how business friendly it is. Nothing appears to be working. You talk about the power sector, you talk about other infrastructure, roads, the transportation sector as well. And you're wondering which business-minded country would like to associate with this. How difficult is it to rectify some of these anomalies, right? In addition to this is the fact that even the minerals of which it is indicated that is the purpose for this meeting, we have it, right? We have it, but sometimes everything ends up being siphoned, not just by influential people, but even foreigners that are allowed to come into the country. You know, the gold in Zamfara is being siphoned. I think at a point in time, somebody said that some persons, I think it was Falano, the human rights lawyer, said the gold is being transported by air, outside the country. And so it's quite unfortunate. Our crude oil as well, even the US used to buy, is no more really demanded by the US. We're not even producing optimally. So much so that Dangote is importing US oil for the Dangote refinery to work. So a lot of things we need to be put in place if we are to rise like a country that is supposed to be taken seriously in the community of nations without waiting to be associated with countries like the US. But of course, we're leaving that story and we're moving to the leadership newspaper. On the front page of the leadership newspaper, ADC has no preferred presidential aspirant, Mark. ADC has no preferred presidential aspirant, Mark. That's the coalition interim chairman, David Mark. It says the African Democratic Congress has thrown open its 2027 presidential ticket to every interested aspirant. I mean, there had been that rumor that Atiku is being marked as the preferred option for the 2027 election. If you remember what the presidential candidate of the ADC in the 2023 election, Dumebi Kachuku, said, he said he went to a meeting, part of the talk, or majority of the talk was focused on how to ensure that Atiku clinches the ticket. And, that is not supposed to be, because it's supposed to go to the south. But of course, David Mark, maybe he's hearing all of these talks left, right, and center, and he's saying nobody has a preferred candidate, is being thrown open. But of course, you have to ask the question, at what point in time are you going to have a collective agreement for a candidate? Because this is not how it's supposed to work. If you go by history, before APC was able to claim ticket, there was a unanimous agreement that Buhari is the candidate, right? And so if you cannot at a point in time arrive at a consensus, it's going to pose a lot of problems. I hope the coalition members understand this, unless they want to just give this a semblance of democracy, or is thrown open. But of course, democracy is also about consensus. As long as you get everybody to agree, right, they should be able to have a formidable front to challenge the ruling party. Otherwise, everything is going to fall like a pack of cards. Then you have this headline as well on the front page of the leadership newspaper. Kano Emirate Tosi, my supporters acted in self-defense. Emir Bayero. Kano Emirate Tosi, my supporters acted in self-defense. Emir Bayero. There was some sort of scuffle in Kano on Sunday between the supporters of the Emir of Kano, that is Sanusi, and of course the 15th Emir, who was relieved of his post by the court, talking about Bayero. That scuffle led to some persons being injured. The story had it that Bayero supporters, or Bayero, was passing through the road to the palace of the Emir of Kano, that is Emir Sanusi. And somehow there was some sort of clash and people got injured. But we're learning that the police is taking care of everything. It seems the Kano Emirate also has not really brought the peace that has been expected. Hoping that that will be settled in no distant time. What is on the front page of The Guardian? On The Guardian, US restricts Nigerians to single or 3-month visas. US restricts Nigerians to single 3-month visas. Well, the US Department of State has announced changes to its reciprocal non-immigrant visa policy that affects Nigerian citizens. And it's starting immediately, as according to what The Guardian is reporting. And so if by July 9, you are applying for a non-immigrant visa, the period allowed for you to stay in the US is just 3 months. And of course, it's going to be a single entry. According to what the US is saying, is a matter of reciprocity and security. When they talk about reciprocity, I get the impression of, what they say, how we say it in a local parlance here, do me, I do. And so the question is, what is the immigration policy, the visa policy when it comes to visa issuance to US citizens in Nigeria? I tried to look up the website of the Nigerian Immigration Service, and of course, when you look at this category of visa, the ones for the business people or those going on tourism, is actually 3 months, like what the US recently imposed. And so is this where the reciprocity is coming from? In Premium Times this morning also reported that when it comes to the US visa, non-immigrant visa for Nigeria, it used to be 2 years, 5 years. So this is like a heavy downgrade, if you ask me. But of course, it's not just Nigeria. Other countries are also affected, and they have pinned it to what they call reciprocity. Security is also of concern here. We know that the US has always been emphatic when it comes to Nigeria trying to update its security measures. I mean, we're in a world where terrorism reigns supreme and a lot of people are acting crazy. But the impression that had been created in the time past is the fact that Nigeria is trying to meet up with all the security measures. I imagine the security measures we have to do with updating the terrorist watch list, or updating the list of missing passports, because some people use this for identity theft, right? And so why is Nigeria falling under this current visa policy of the US? But what does this actually mean for Nigerian travelers? I think it would mean that there needs to be adequate preparation before you embark on the journey under non-immigrant visa. Because you can spend so much trying to apply visa or trying to buy a ticket and end up not making good use of your visa. And so if you're going to stay, you ensure you use all your time so you don't come back midway. If you come back midway and want to go back, you have to reapply for another visa and spend more money on airfare. In this Nigerian economy, that is huge. So you need to make adequate planning. The US government, we know under Trump, has been quite emphatic when it comes to tightening their immigration policy. All of these things is for the interest of the US. Remember, recently they also put strict measures when it comes to students who might want to come to the US or people on exchange programs, saying that they will have to review the privacy setting of the social media handles, meaning that if it's in the privacy setting, they will have to change it to public just so that the social media handles can be monitored. All of these things to ensure that those people who are hostile to the US government, US citizens, US interests, are not granted visa. I mean, they had also cropped up some sort of argument saying, where do you draw the line? Sometimes these things, you really cannot demarcate the line. It's just like in Nigeria when governments say, well, they want to regulate social media. And someone was saying, okay, no problem in regulating social media, but how do you measure somebody who is propagating hate? How do you ensure that hate speech is not about criticizing government? Some people actually view this as possibly leading people to self-regulate themselves. So how much of free speech are we going to have in coming days, especially on social media, for people who want to travel to the US? Let me know a particular story on the Guardian. You have this education matters now. Varsities few as FG fixes 150 cut-off mark, 16 years admission age. Varsities few as FG fixes 150 cut-off mark, 16 years admission age. Basically, there was a meeting of JAMB yesterday. All of the stakeholders agreed that they're going to raise the cut-off mark for university admission from 140 to 150, right? And what are varsities streaming, you may want to ask? Well, at that stakeholders meeting, some of them were suggesting, well, let's leave it at 140. Some people were saying, well, 160. There is also that talk about university autonomy. Universities should be allowed to do their thing. But of course, you have the JAMB registrar and of course the education minister saying the benchmark will have to be 150. Varsities can decide to make it higher, but on no account must varsities actually reduce it further. Even at this 150, some people are not satisfied, saying that it doesn't actually reflect the average cut-off mark. I mean, if you want to raise cut-off mark, it should be going something towards 200 and something, right? Because if we say 150, it means on the average, out of the 400 marks, because it's 4 subjects that are supposed to be taken, out of the 400 marks, it means that the average score is 30 something, which is not really good. It's not a pass. A pass should be something in the realm of 50 and all of those things. But I guess cut-off mark or not, it should be left for students who work hard and measure themselves not just by the benchmark but by their own standard, right? I think that is what they should aim for. There is also the talk about 16 years admission age. They have put the benchmark at 16. There was that talk in the last administration that people less than 18 should not be allowed admission, and there was this uproar and all of those things. But everything has been revised now. Not just allowing people who are 16 years to be able to gain entry into the university, but if you have special gifts, that is, if you have this intellectual capacity, impressive intellectual capacity, and you are under 16, maybe you can be allowed entry. But of course, you have to show proof why you should be allowed to gain entry into the university despite being underage. On the Vanguard, that's the next. On the front page, again, Dangote Petroleum Refinery slashes petrol price to 820 naira per litre. Again, Dangote Petroleum Refinery slashes petrol price to 820 naira per litre. Well, this is good news, right? But of course, I don't know. The only grounds I have about this constant reduction in the price is the fact that it doesn't reflect, on the common masses. The common masses still pay higher transportation costs, or the price, it doesn't even change. And so the question we have to throw it back to the motorists. Some people argue that the motorists also expend money when it comes to repairs and all of these things. But why is it that at no time has it ever reflected? Is it every time they incur costs that are above the slashed price? We have to ask ourselves a serious question in this country. I mean, sometimes everything falls beyond economic logic. Dangote will reduce its own price, but it doesn't reflect. Remember recently, Dangote actually said they're going to be doling out about 4,000 CNG trucks just so that marketers will bear less costs when it comes to transportation. So the marketers benefit, but the common man does not benefit. I mean, make it make sense. But those are the front pages for you today. Stay informed and stay in tune. Don't forget to follow us and drop your comments. Let us know what you think about any of the headlines on our front pages. Meanwhile, go out there, do your best, and of course, leave the rest to God. We'll always be here bringing out the headlines one page at a time with clarity. My name is Njideka. Have a fantastic day.